No one.
What's up, Gator Nation? Welcome into the latest Gators Online Podcast, live from Spurs Gridiron Grill. And I am joined this week, after a little hiatus, by Nick Del Torre. Not in studio, but he is here with us, coming from his headquarters. Nick, what's up, my friend?
Got engaged.
I know, a lot has happened.
A bunch of stuff happened. And there's some football going on, too.
Yeah, we got a lot to talk about. We got a new, speaking of your headquarters, football has a new headquarters that they just opened on Sunday that we'll get into. Obviously, a huge recruiting weekend for Florida. The Gators had their first scrimmage last Saturday, going to have their next scrimmage this Saturday. And we'll kind of just give our impressions today of where things are at with this team halfway through fall training camp. Some of our impressions of the roster, some of the position battles that we've got to see through the viewing periods that we've been able to observe. So a lot that Nick and I will get into today. We will not have a guest on today's show. It'll just be him and I potting and catching up for the past 2 weeks. So first of all, I think by the time you guys hear this, we may have a sense or a schedule of when the media is going to get its eyes on this brand new $85 million facility. But the football team, they got to first walk through it on Sunday. It was the first time the players had been in it in 5 months. And Nick, that was obviously, and we could talk about the team and we could talk about recruiting, but this moment is kind of a milestone for this program and something that's going to be way bigger, for years to come.
I don't want this to sound negative at all, but the building is very Florida. Like, it's not. There's no Clemson slide. There's no, the recording studio that we thought was going to be there is not there. But it's like
now it's a VR room.
Yeah. It's very classy. It almost like understated. It's just really nice. It's not over the top. Some of that stuff I can't wait to see, like that VR room, that virtual reality room. I think the big emphasis is really on like the health and wellness of the players, though. Trey Dean was talking about those sleep pods. So I think they did a really good job with it, and it's not, the chocolate fountains, the golden chocolate fountains, all the crazy stuff. So I think it's very Florida, but I'm excited to get in there and see it.
Yeah, and as Scott Strickland, he told me when I was previewing this building, and he told us when he came on the Gators Online Podcast, look, there's no gold-plated toilets in there. They weren't wasteful with their spending. They didn't do things that were just for recruiting in terms of trying to make a splash on a recruiting weekend. That was going to be something that stands out, but you're literally just doing it and putting it in there and spending the money on it to impress a group of recruits a few weekends out of the year. Like, that space could be better utilized for other purposes. So
Right.
I think that's something that went into mind. But, right out of the gate, Scott Strickland said, we did this in mind with recruiting, though. It is the most important piece. Billy has talked about how much it improves the player experience, how much it improves their time, which we'll get into. But from a recruiting standpoint, I mean, Scott admitted, look, at the end of the day, there's a reason why banks and churches build really nice lobbies and really nice buildings, is because it's supposed to send a message of what those organizations stand for. And he just said, frankly, Florida football has been not been able to have facilities that represent the UAA's commitment to football. And now they do. And now that first impression that recruits have when they walk in that building is going to send a completely different message than what the facilities have been sending for decades. And so that alone, I think, like you said, the classiness aspect of it, it's first class, and they have some things in there that are certainly newer features that are represented in a 2022 construction versus some of these buildings that were open, 5 years ago or what have you. And I think really specifically the locker room, Strickland said, has some features in it that no other locker rooms around the country have. And that's an area that I think folks aren't going to be able to see either. That's just players only and recruits.
I don't think they're gonna let. I don't think they're gonna let us in when we get our tour.
Listen, if they want to give me a little sleep pod, though, I'll go in there and check it out.
Listen, I'll spend while you guys go on the tour. I'll take 30 minutes in the sleep pod. I think you hit it. It's first class. It's not gaudy or ostentatious. It's just everything that the players need and done in a first class manner. I think the biggest thing that I think is so cool is that everything now connects. And I don't know if Billy's. It takes us 18 minutes to walk from the locker room. Like maybe Des Watson takes him 18 minutes, but I don't think that's an 18-minute walk from the locker room to the practice fields. But now it's just like you literally roll from the locker room 20 steps and you're on the field. I think that's really cool. I was standing on the far practice field the other day, and it just looks completely different. Like everything's kind of like boxed in. You feel like you're at a football facility where in the past you kind of had McKeithen, rest in peace, and then just the O-Dome was there, and now you kind of feel like you're in this little football bubble when you're on the practice fields.
It is. It's literally kind of their own corner of campus.
Yeah.
And it's, as Chip Howard said when I spoke to him for this preview story, it's the way that it should have been. Like this is what was supposed to happen.
Can you imagine? Can you imagine that 3-story building that like McElwain, they were just going to try to figure it out and sandwich it in somewhere. And it's just like how disjointed that would be. You would have spent $60 million on that.
And they also were just going to upgrade McKeithen. They were just going to pour some money into McKeithen. That those two instances were not the right moves for Florida to make. And by deciding, you know what, let's just build a brand new baseball stadium, demolish McKeithen, and put it right there, and have the space to do it right. They kind of set those programs up for generations now by making that investment. Now they also spent $90 million extra.
But
they prolonged things too.
Yeah, you would have spent $20 million to upgrade McKeithen, and then 6 years down the line, you would have needed to spend another $20 million. Because it would have just been a Band-Aid. And then you would have
had to add to the 3-story facility. That would have had to keep getting upgraded.
You would have been stuck with a facility that didn't work and didn't make sense. Yeah. So you would have just built it. I think before Scott Strickland made these plans happen, I think you were just doing stuff to do it. It's like, well, we need a football facility. So what can we do? All right, well, let's make a 3-story building shoved into the corner by a track. And it's like, well, remember
once upon a time, Nick, the indoor practice facility was not going to be a 400 yards.
Thank Jim McElwain for that.
Yeah, McElwain came in and said, no, we're not doing that.
Jim, I remember he being like, we play on 100 yards, don't we? He goes, and we actually need more than 120 because you got 10 yards for each end zone. I'm like, wow, that makes sense.
Yeah. It's just, in like, also where that position was located on 2nd Avenue, it's just not, you wouldn't have had that hub there. You would have still felt like there was some disconnection between the practice field and having the track facility kind of in between. It's just, the only convenience would have been that it was right next to the practice field. That was it. But here it's like this one's connected to the indoor practice facility. It's right on that road where a lot of players, have their apartments, have their classes. It's very easy to access as opposed to being on the other side of the street. So I think the time thing for me is a big deal because I think it promotes your guys just staying in the building. And not that you want to keep them there per se, but like it just literally Tyreek Sapp, as he was going through it on his Instagram live, was like, man, I'm never going to have to leave here. Because if you think about how it used to be or how it had been for decades and decades, like guys were inside Ben Hill Griffin Stadium in the training room or in the locker room. And, they had to walk. First of all, they had to walk in between those two. But then if they wanted to go to the practice field, they're walking to that. If they wanted to go to the dining hall, they're walking across the street to go there. I mean, there were so many trips that they had to take.
Right.
On top of that, if let's say, okay, we don't have to go do any of those things, but we just want to go hang out, and we want to go and play a pickup basketball game, or we want to go and hang out by the pool. Well, they had to find somebody's apartment complex to go to then, and now they're having to take a trip there. Like all those things I just mentioned, they can now do in one spot, and everything's 75 feet from each other. Um,
Yeah.
the only time they literally have to leave is to go to class or when they're ready to go home. And to have that kind of convenience, it's just going to create an environment. I think that players they want to be there. And then it's not like they're just hanging out with their teammates; they're hanging out with all the athletes at UF that are going to be in the player lounge, in the dining hall, and in the outdoor space. It's a cool setup, man.
Yeah, I really want to get in there and kind of see it for ourselves. But I like the little touches as well. If you look on like the outside, on the bottom layers of the bricks, they've have like a Gator logo built into the wall. The Workham Silly Gators banner is up there. So I think there's a lot of small little touches that we'll probably get to see better firsthand when we're walking through. But it's like you said, you've created a space where your team can be a team, and you don't have to be like, all right, well, we can only get 7 guys in this apartment, so we're going to hang out with these 7. You can have your entire team at that facility, not playing basketball. Trent Whittemore, I think we both asked him. He was like, "Yep, maybe after football season."
Yeah, I know Trent's gonna throw down some dunks on there before all's said and done. There's no way. But before we get into the football aspect and kind of just give our take on where this team is at halfway through camp, I do just want to touch on recruiting, and then we'll jump to this first break. But it's old news now, even though it's all happened since our last show. But it's um, starting with Jaden Robinson flipping from South Carolina, which seems like forever ago already. And then the weekend that Coach Chaos and the staff had, landing 3 defensive linemen, also landing their first commit for 2024, UF Legacy and Miles Graham. Just an incredible weekend. It was all happening at once, right? First scrimmage goes down. They're this recruiting hot streak, and then they open their new facility. Like we put out, and I put out that story on our message board on Gators Online, and one of the posters was like, Zach, I can't take this much excitement in one weekend. But
they were catching commits. They were catching commits during the scrimmage.
Yeah, I mean, I think obviously going into the weekend, we talked about it on the show last week. Everyone knew that Collins was deciding and knew that James was deciding, but to have Will Norman go ahead and pull the trigger as well, give the Gators another pledge from IMG Academy, where they seemingly just couldn't get a commitment, for the longest, and now they've gotten 3. It's incredible the work that Billy's done there specifically, but also now with defensive line recruiting and Sean Spencer, they've really bulked up there with some of the prospects that they've gotten. They're not done yet either. Still some
Right.
targets out there to be had, but Nick, it's just they kind of got the ball rolling at the end of June with those 3 on 300 commits, and they haven't stopped.
It's really impressive. It's how long ago does it seem like when everyone was down on the recruiting and like getting on the staff and listen, I still think,
and so much of that was based on one recruitment.
Yeah.
One.
Oh man. It seems like a long time ago. There's still holes. Like I think you still need to get some offensive linemen, and I don't know if that's a flip or a transfer portal. Like there's still some things to do. But there's also some big names out there. Obviously, Cormani McLean's someone that Gator fans want to talk about and would love to see in Gainesville. So Florida's at 10 in our rankings, and I could see them moving up. I don't know if there's enough talent left to get them into a top 5, but I think you can finish 6, 7.
See, that's the thing. Is there enough talent left on the board of uncommitted? Maybe, maybe not. but I
But if
don't
you
think they're done. I don't think they're done flipping. You know,
well, pancakes, buddy.
yeah, man. Like this staff has already had a few surprises in this cycle, in the last cycle. I know a lot of Florida fans and a lot of the Gator commits have they've zeroed in on Pup out of Duval. So that's going to be one that I know Florida's not going to give up on him. And again, we're going to get into Florida season here and what we think of this team for 2022. But depending on the year they have, or certainly some of the recruiting weekends that they have, I think it could go a long way and maybe swaying some guys in how they feel about Florida. But at 20 commits, the core that now they have in place with this class. It's really impressive when you consider the blue chip ratio, when you consider the amount of prospects from the state of Florida, and then the fact that all 20 are within the 500-mile radius, which Billy talked about this week. It's a kudos to not only Billy and his staff, but the recruiting staff. Obviously, I think Billy, gets a lot of credit. The he Florida lands some commits and the fans are like, "Oh, Billy's at it again." Which how it is, the head coach always kind of, gets the most credit for recruiting, but it literally is an army of folks that are doing
Yeah.
it. Um, you know, Katie Turner, I think obviously is one of the most well recognized, and she does a phenomenal job. I think with obviously what her title is, the recruiting strategy that they have, but there's also so many people that's on staff with her that we saw get recognized today on Thursday by On3. They put out their, I think it was 65 rising stars for 2022 in college football recruiting and personnel. And the Gators had 3 staff members on that list, and Jacob LaFrance, Bird Sherrill, and Bree Wade. So I think that right there speaks to the talent that Billy's kind of assembled there in his recruiting department, and you're seeing some of those results show up now.
It'll be interesting because, like, I think he made a compelling case to Scott Strickland to even get these number of people.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I feel like he's going to have to replace a lot of them. Like these are people that are going to get jobs elsewhere. Like you're going to get all these assistant coaches are going to be on the field coaches at some point, and
Sure.
you're going to have to do some replacing. Almost like Nick Saban at Alabama, the way he's had to replace assistant coaches. But I think it's a testament, like you said. It takes a village to raise a child. Like it takes the entire army to make this thing work. And I think that was a cool list from Matt Zenitz, and it's certainly been a whirlwind 3 weeks.
Yeah, man.
On the recruiting trail.
I mean, you think about it. At the time when they landed their last pledge on Sunday in James, that marked where the Gators had gotten, for the 4th time in 8 weeks, they'd gotten 3 or more commits. And out of those 4 times, there were 3 times where they got 4 commits in 1 week.
Yeah.
And the most recent one obviously being this past week, and that was 5 total when you count Miles Graham for 2024. So, obviously it's not a fluke, some of the stretches that we've seen here this summer from this staff. And I think if you're a Florida fan that follows recruiting, you should only be excited about what's to come, because they haven't even put a product on the field yet. They haven't even recruited with this $85 million football facility that we've talked about here in the first segment. So there's going to be even more to sell, Nick.
Yeah. It's well, don't go out and kick the bucket this season. Don't go 6-6. Put a good product on the field, which I think they will, and that can only help to recruit. So yeah. It's definitely an exciting time right now, and I think you can feel it in the fan base. You can see it on the message board. People are excited as we're inching closer and closer to September 3rd. You can feel it in the air.
And I think it's going to make a difference too that now they have so many guys committed. I've said that before, but it's now not just the staff and the players that are involved in the recruiting efforts. Now you got people that are in Florida's 2023 class actively recruiting,
Right.
their fellow classmates, and I think that makes a huge difference, especially some of these guys like Trayon Webb, who seem to be very convincing.
He's relentless. Relentless is the word I would put. Miles Graham also was already in the 2023 and 2024 class, already tweeting at people.
Yeah, I mean, and that's I think for him too, being the first commit of the class, being a legacy player, and being a top 50 overall recruit, he really sets the tone for that cycle. And to have that guy be the first one to pop, it's almost like he's the face, now in kind of leading that class. And always cool to kind of see that come together where it's either a legacy or whether a brother. We've seen brothers that have come to play at UF. But as Billy mentioned this week when he was asked about legacy recruits, he said he joked to somebody that he thinks that the staff got here at the right time because a lot of those players from the Spurrier era are now having kids. So it's kind of lining up right in favor of the Gators. So obviously, Graham's going to be one to watch here for years to come. We're going to jump to this first break. When we come back on the other side, we're going to switch gears, get into some fall camp talk and what we've seen from this football team through the first half.
Hi, Steve Spurrier here. Making a reservation at my restaurant is easier than a Saturday afternoon homecoming game against Vandy. You don't have to call or email. Just go to spurriers.com, hit the reservation button, pick a date, number of guests, and a time. It's so simple, I can do it. In fact, I just did. Maybe I'll see you tonight.
Welcome back into the Gators Online Podcast. Zach coming to you live from Spurrier's Gridiron Grill. Nick joining me from his headquarters, and now we are going to get into some Florida football talk. The Gators set to have their second scrimmage on Saturday. I think this time, hopefully, they will be able to be in the swamp. Weather forced them inside the indoor last Saturday, but the Gators are now more than halfway through fall training camp. I think we've got a good idea of where the depth chart stands at most positions. There's been some injuries that have, I think, made some battles, kind of play out or kind of decided, should I say. But most of them have been pretty minor. We can get into some of that as well. But Nick, before we start getting into specific positions and some of the things that we've seen, just what is your overall feeling of this team right now? One scrimmage in, second scrimmage to go.
Yeah, I think which is typical of the time that the defense is ahead of the offense right now. I also think I've always thought this, but I'm even more convinced that this is going to be a heavy running offense. And not that that's always what Billy Napier is going to be, but I think the strength of the offense is the offensive line. Ethan White looks great. Kingsley Egukan nailed it.
Yes, you did, Nick.
Nailed it. I think them, Osiris Torrance, Tarquin, Garage. I think that's the strength. You've got 3, maybe 4 running backs if you include ETN.
Yep, you got that too, Nick. You're on a roll. Woo!
And then Florida's receivers are guys that, other than Ricky Pearsall, are guys that aren't great in short space, not going to catch the ball and make people miss, but they can get past people. They long striders, guys with some speed, Justin Shorter, Xavier Henderson, which I think plays into, hey, if we're running the ball successfully, pop a little play action.
Yep.
And everyone saw what Anthony Richardson did, like Uncle Rico and Napoleon Dynamite threw the ball clear over the mountains.
All right, listen, we got to do a pronunciation sidebar real quick.
I'm not doing Princely's name. I can't do it.
No. This is for me, Nick. This is not for you.
Okay.
We're having an intervention here. This is long overdue. You haven't been here the last 2 weeks. I think that I've got this down, though. I think that I've come to grips with how I pronounce or mispronounce the head coach at Florida's last name. I think that
You make it sound French.
I now hear that I've been saying Billy Napier.
Uh-huh.
What I need to be saying, or what I should have been saying all along, because what they call him is Coach Nape. That's Coach Nape. So you need to say Billy Napier. Am I right on that? Napier. So
what you call him? Napier?
No, it was nay. I went like hard on the nay. Like yay or nay, I was going real Billy Napier. So listen, this is enough of this conversation, but I just wanted to let the listeners know I am aware. I'm working on it. Bear with me. I will just call him Billy for the time being until I feel really comfortable with that last name. But anyways, off the sidebar.
Billy Napier.
Yes. I think Billy's offense is going to be yes, it's definitely going to feature the run game kind of being the forefront of the attack. And I think that at the end of the day, you play to your strengths. And, you look at the dual threat quarterback that you have in Anthony Richardson, the depth that you have in the backfield, and then the makeup of your offensive line, which is certainly lends you to believe that they're going to be able to run the ball and that their strengths are run blocking. Even last year, you look at, I think that it was mentioned that they averaged over 5 yards a carry, whatever the number was. I mean, Florida was able to run the ball last year. Dan Mullen just didn't do it enough with the backs that he had, which that's another sidebar of him getting trolled this week for Dameon Pierce going off in Texans preseason games. But I think at the end of the day, you play to your strengths, and you look at the backs, you look at the quarterback, you look at your offensive line, and then you look at what you have in the passing game at tight end and receiver. Certainly some weapons there, and I think the starters that they're going to feel good about. But at the end of the day, your strengths lie at your other positions, and that's if he had the personnel that the Gators had in 2020. I think we'd see this attack probably leaning a lot more towards the passing game. So I just think that's where things are at. And I think obviously Billy's going to play to his strengths. And I'm excited to see, and I'm sure the running backs are, them actually get fed the football and have a drive where they just have the hot hand and you just keep feeding it to them. To have a offense where you might have a guy not only rush for 1,000 yards, but might have two backs that rush for 1,000 yards. Anthony Richardson could have 1,000-yard rushing season. I am interested to see how that running back rotation shakes out. We really can't, take away enough from the viewing period because guys have been repping in different orders. I do think it's fair to say that Naquan is running back one, or at the very least, he is the leader of that group. And I think he's going to set the tone for that room, whether he gets the majority of the snaps or carries or it's somebody else on another night. He's the guy that everybody's looking to. And I think from there, it'll be interesting to see, the uses of Montrell and Lingard. But I think all three of those guys are going to be heavily involved. And I wouldn't be surprised to see the season finish where you're looking at one guy or two guys maybe having 1,000 yards, but a second or third guy being at that 700, 800, 900 range, because we've seen it before from Billy's offenses.
Or maybe even nobody at 1,000 yards, but four guys at 750, 800. I really think I don't know if you'll get four guys, four running backs. Obviously, I think Anthony Richardson will get a ton of carries. If you look at their team last year, they had four guys with 100 carries. If you include Leo Lewis, is that his name? The quarterback?
Levi.
If you include him, they had four guys carry the ball 100 times. And
Nick, you were right on the last names, and then you just had a first name just had to throw you off.
First name. I think I've said like this could be a 60-40 run to pass offense.
Yeah.
And maybe that's exaggerating, but if you include like pass plays that were called where Richardson scrambles, that ends up going down as a run play. I think that kind of gets you to that 60-40. But if it's the strength, like you just said, play to your strengths. Don't don't go in there and be like, well, we're running the ball too much. Let's try something else just to try it. It's like, no, if you're running the ball successfully, and I think that's Florida's best plan of attack on offense, then do it. Lean into your strengths.
Yeah, and I think obviously, one thing there that would have lended itself to Florida, maybe adding more things with its passing game or just having more of the percentage of its offense showcase that would have been Ricky Pearsall going through all of camp. And the fact of the matter is that he's now missed, I think, 6 consecutive practices. So him being out, him not being in the scrimmages, that's taken away from what more the passing game could have been. Now it still can develop into that. Um, Now, one thing about Richardson I do want to mention before we go on to some other spots is, I think the injury to Jack Miller, which we'll find out the significance of it here, I think soon. Um, that's going to be something to monitor because if he's depending on how long he's out or what his availability is, that certainly might factor into Anthony Richardson's usage in the run game, and certainly how much you protect him leading up to the season opener. But I think right there,
it was a scary sight. We're out at practice on Wednesday or on Wednesday, and there's 2 healthy scholarship quarterbacks.
One's a true freshman that just got to campus too. So it's not like you want to get in a situation where you're throwing him into the fire. Jalen Kitna did come back to practice Wednesday, so that was good news. He didn't participate, but he was out there, and he was following along with the team in drills. I think based on what Billy said about his minor procedure, I would imagine that he's going to be able to be available to start the season. So, but that's something obviously to monitor for Florida as they get closer and closer to this Utah game. Obviously, at wide receiver with Pearsall out, you're looking at other guys to kind of step up. I think that it's pretty clear that this is Shorter and Henderson, and then there's kind of that next tier of receivers. I think Jaquavion Frazier's has kind of shown that he's pushing for kind of first team reps and is going to be a guy that's maybe more involved in the rotation. But really, the guy that we heard from this week, Nick, Trent Whittemore, I think this is a chance for him to obviously have a big year, be more of a focal point among the receiver group, but also he's kind of that guy that I think that has the flexibility to play inside and outside, and has definitely been getting a lot more, been counted on more with Pearsall out of the lineup.
With Pearsall out, I mean,
he's
Trent has to be the guy in the slot. You've got Ty Bowman, who I've seen drop some passes. I think you've seen some good highlights from him in practice, but I don't think that's
I've seen
the guy
speed.
you would turn to. He's speed, yeah. But I didn't think that I would say this when Ricky Pearsall got to Gainesville, but I think the offense, with him in it, is so much more dynamic. He just gives you something that, and I think the world of Trent Whittemore. I think he's a great receiver, but Ricky Pearsall gives Florida something that they don't have if he's hurt, if he's not on the field. It's a whole different wrinkle. He's a guy that you can throw screens to, a guy that you can get the ball on a little drag route and he can make somebody miss. Florida's got a bunch of guys that kind of are the same mold at receiver, and he breaks that mold. He's something completely. So you've got to get. I wouldn't put him back on the practice field. I would just try to get him healthy and get him ready for September 3rd.
Yeah, and I think that's their plan. He is out of a boot. He's been going through all these exercises with Joe.
Some of that stuff looks worse than practice. They had like 45-pound plates up over their head yesterday, doing like high knees, and I'm like, I'd rather be practicing than doing that stuff with Danos.
And the fact that he's doing that stuff is a positive sign of his progression, and he's kind of been vocal in practice. I mean, reporters have overheard him kind of talking about how he's feeling better on his foot. So obviously his usage and his involvement in the offense is going to be something that I think fans are excited to see. And it's unfortunate for him because I want to say he got hurt like the first or second day after they went to full pads.
Yeah.
He didn't even get to make it to the scrimmage. And then I think, Nick mentioned the offensive line. I think the Gators are in a really good spot there. Their starters are set. I think Josh Braun is your sixth man with the ability to play guard and tackle. That's a really, valuable, I think, thing that the Gators have there. Austin Barber has really stepped up as well, and kind of is a guy that's, when Richard Garage was out in camp, he was getting a lot of first team reps, and getting some looks there. So they're in a good spot. We were on the Gator panel last night. Nick and Andy Staples, former Florida offensive lineman, said that he'd gotten the sense from around the program that this is the best that they felt about their offensive line in a long time. And I think that goes to what you said about this being one of the team's strengths and why they feel like they're going to be able to run the ball.
I don't remember. I was going to say at the beginning of the season, I don't remember feeling this good about an offensive line at any point of the season. And I'm heading in my 10th year covering Florida. I don't know if they're going to win like the best offensive line in the country, but I think this is a really solid group.
They have a chance to not have weak links. That's like there's been times where they got DJ Humphries, but then there's a couple other starters that is a drop off.
Mm-hmm.
And they're not going to have that.
I don't think so. And I'm really excited to see Osiris Torrance, because this is a guy who at the Sun Belt level, at not at a Power 5 level, but hasn't allowed a sack in 3 years. I don't care what level of football you're playing. That's impressive.
Yeah.
And then also with how much we've talked about the running game, like that's exciting for an offensive lineman to just be told like, hey, we're going to run the ball. You're going to put a hat on a hat, and you had to move the guy in front of you. Don't worry about pass blocking. We're playing physical. Put your forehead into somebody's face mask and move him 5 yards upfield.
Yeah, and that's, I honestly, I think that you look at Florida's tight end group and some of the physicality that they have there. We've seen a lot early in the early portions of practice of those units working together. And I think that they've got certainly the players there at that position that lend itself even more to the run game. Guys like Odom, guys like Zanders, and I think even Zipper has really improved with his blocking. We've seen the tight ends. I've seen the tight ends work more on blocking than I've seen in a long time. We don't get to watch all of practice, but when we used to see viewing periods, they weren't working on it like they are now. It's clear that those guys are going to be asked to do that. And fortunately for Florida, they got a guy down right now, Arliss Boardingham, with his arm in a sling, and still plenty of depth at that position. So they're in a really good spot there. And I think Zanders and Zipper are obviously the top two guys. And it'll be interesting to see how they get also involved and worked into the passing game, because that'll definitely be a feature too.
Yeah, and then moving on, we're coming up on time, but we need to move to defense.
Yeah. Right there. When we go defense, what comes to mind right away? Like what do you like? What are you concerned about?
I was going to ask what your biggest concern about. I think I've mentioned it. My biggest concern is interior defensive line, and stopping the run. Can you stop the run between the tackles? Like Gervon Dexter is, I think, a stud, but who plays next to him? I think Jalen Lee is making progress and he's getting better. Who's after that? As Chris Rumpf said when he was here at Florida, those big boys, they have one gas tank. And when they run out of gas, there's no refilling it at halftime. There's no refilling it in the third quarter. So who's playing behind Gervon? Who's playing behind Jalen Lee? Can Des Watson play 20 snaps a game?
Yeah.
I think Florida's on the edges. Florida is deep, and talented, but inside, that's where I have questions.
Gosh, when we see Des in the drills, he moves pretty well for a guy his size. The only problem is seeing him in the drills.
Yeah.
He's just calling it like it is. He's had to take breaks in camps. So many times we've seen him just sitting out, with his helmet off because he's just catching his breath. I'm not one to talk. There's no way I could ever go out there and practice in that heat at my weight. So I can't imagine, being his size and moving the way that he does. And I think he's only going to continue to improve. The fact that they're practicing now, that he's out there. I will say that he's seemingly been taking less and less breaks every time that we've gone out there. Like that first week, I want to say the first 2 or 3 viewing periods, he was just not even in the drills. Like he was just, catching his breath. And now, we've got a lot of clips of him actually moving. Now, having said all that, we heard going into fall training camp from Gervon Dexter that he was going to be playing some more defensive end this year. And I think that he will. But just how they've been splitting up the groups in practice, it's clear that he is still repping with the defensive tackles. And based on the depth at defensive end, which you alluded to, Nick, and where the Gators are lacking in the interior of the defensive line, it's just hard for me to see them not playing him at defensive tackle the majority of the time.
It just doesn't make sense, right? Like you're so deep on the edges and you have a deficiency. Why would you take your best defensive tackle and put him at end where you've got Sapp?
Oh, come on, Nick.
No. Umamelan.
You did it. Yes.
So you got Princely Umamelan, you've got Tyreek Sapp, you've got Justice Boone on the other side, you've got Brenton Cox, you've got Lloyd Summerall, David Reese. Like you've got dudes on the outside. There's no need to put Gervon Dexter at end. You've got guys there, and you need somebody inside.
Just off of Tyreek Sapp alone, you don't need to play Dexter there. Like he looks like a man possessed going through position drills. The Tyreek train is rolling right now, Nick. STA pride is in full effect, man. And I do think that him now having a year under his belt, not coming into Florida as a late, arrival in camp last year and not really having a chance to get his feet wet. He's in a totally different place. You've talked about him being motivated, from the birth of his child this offseason. So I think he's helped put the Gators in a really good spot along with Justice Boone and his emergence in camp. So, the Gators right now, I think, are in a good place, with that development at defensive end and Gervon obviously getting himself into shape physically where he can play both spots. We saw him and Anthony Richardson get named by Bruce Feldman as one of the freaks on the freaks list, 2 of the top 100 players in college football. So Dexter obviously, and no matter where he's lining up, he's going to steal the show, I think, at that spot and set the tone for Florida up front defensively. And I think, you mentioned the Gators looking good on the edge. I mean, that's at end and at outside linebacker, the jack position, as they call it in this scheme. But Florida's got so much talent there. Now, having said that, I am just coming off the defensive observations that I wrote the other day, so I got to call it like I saw it. And Mike P, man, Gator great. He was not happy with how his group started practice the other day. Now, for all I know, after that 15-minute viewing period, they could have completely flipped the switch and had a great rest of the session. But he was not happy with how they started the group. And, he, like a lot of coaches on staff, are not going to accept things not done right. They demand perfection, and they're going to make you keep repeating drills until you get it right. But, having said that, you just look at the depth there. Florida does have Powell down right now with an injury. I don't think it's anything that's expected to be serious. He was still going through some of the drills. He was just non-contact. But between Brent Cox, Lloyd Summerall, him all there, I think those are your top 3. But, Florida's got even some younger guys in Borders and Jack Pyburn that are developing there as well. So, Lloyd Summerall, he's probably been one of just physically been one of the most impressive looking players in fall camp. he certainly passes the look test.
And it's taken a while. So
Yeah.
credit to him, because I mean, he came in, he reminded me a lot of Alex McAllister when he came in.
Yes.
That long, super lean frame, fast.
Great comparison.
That's what and shout out to my boy Callie. But I don't think he ever got as big as Lloyd is right now.
No, he did not. Lloyd looks impressive. He's still, having said that, he looks like $1 million, but he's still learning, he's still developing. Yeah. I think that having I didn't mention David Reese, but he's another veteran at that spot. Having him there, having Cox there and guys like that to learn from, I think is probably helping Summerall as well. But I just think he's taken really well to Mike Peterson's coaching, and just the style and the way that he works with those guys is impressive. I mean, he makes you want to get out there and go through some drills and then quit once you start sweating, because man, it is hot out there, Nick.
It's hot, it's humid, it's gross.
I don't know how Utah is going to handle it, man. It's I know they've been trying to pump in some heat in their practices, but it's kind of hard to substitute this.
There's no replicating it. It was 90% humidity last night at 9:40 p.m.
Yep. And then obviously last couple spots on defense, what the Gators are getting at inside linebacker with Ventrell Miller and Amari Burney. Ventrell has been in non-contact this week, but he's still going through all the drills, just kind of slowing up, not going through tackling. But
it's just giving Shamar James a chance to really shine, and he's grabbed that opportunity and he's running with it.
He is. I mean, he's been able to basically all camp go in drills behind Ventrell Miller and Amari Burney. So it's basically just shadowing them in practice, watching all their movements, learning from them, and as they kind of show him the ropes. And it's clear to me that they're counting on him to contribute and give them some playing time as a true freshman. So between his emergence and then guys that you already like a lot at that spot, and Derek Wingo and Scooby Williams, you have DeJuan Block there as well. I mean, there's a lot of depth at that spot. I think that watching Jay Bateman work with that group in camp, man, he is very, very detailed.
I've been very say what you will about his recruiting and what's going on with linebacker recruiting, but I've been very impressed with him as a coach on the field. Yes. I'm worried about him though, because it looks like at one point he's going to tackle, whether they're tackling donuts, and I think he might actually get not fed up, but get frustrated if someone does a rep wrong. And I'm like, Coach, I don't know if you should be doing all of this.
Yeah. Yeah.
He's going to wrap up that donut one of these days. I'm telling you.
And he's very explanatory when it comes to, coaching up his players and kind of what he wants to see from them in drills. So you're right. I mean, he's been impressive. It's not a surprise though, when you look at his track record and what he's accomplished as an assistant. So, and then finally in the secondary, looking at where the Gators are at, obviously Jason Marshall being out is something that we've monitored. That's honestly, you'd love to have him healthy. I think that his hamstring injury is not going to be anything that holds him back, but that's also kind of allowed things to shake out even more with the competition for that other spot opposite Marshall, because he's your cornerback one. So whether that's Helm, Kimber, Devin Moore, those seems to be the names that we are hearing about the most and that are getting the most first team reps in practice. And so that's kind of where the depth chart stands there. I think Jordan Young is another guy as well, that has made some plays in not only in practice, but in the scrimmage. Actually just had an interception in the scrimmage last Saturday. So I think Florida is not only, fine at quarterback. I think they have a good idea of what they're getting and where they're at. Safety and nickel to me is still very intriguing, because I think that Patrick Toney is going to mix it up. I think he's going to have some different lineups out there. I think he's going to use guys at multiple spots, interchange them between safety and nickel, guys like Trevez Johnson and Trey Dean. But there's plenty of options. I think we're going to see other guys get opportunities and them not be so stuck on playing a certain pair of players or always having the same combinations of players be on the field. Yeah, for sure. I think Patrick's going to mix it up, and he's not afraid to put Kamari Wilson out there.
That will be interesting. Yeah, and you've written about it because Trey Dean's played a little bit of nickel, and that might give people some like PTSD based on having to play the star role in Grantham's defense. I think it's different responsibilities in Patrick Toney's, but there's a lot of guys, and I like the mix of experience and veteran leadership with guys like Devin Moore and Kamari, and even Jalen Kimber is young. I think you've got a good mix of veteran leadership and young talent.
I do think at some point this season you will see Devin Moore start. I don't know when it'll be. I don't know how that's going to shake out. He's going to get reps with the starters right away and get in that cornerback rotation. But we've just heard too many great things about him, and he was named a preseason All-American by On3 this week. So, congrats to Devin, and I think that's a sign of things to come for him, no doubt about it. And look, but before we leave, we can't get out of here without mentioning the game changers, and obviously Nick's favorite position, the punters. No need to preview much there or assess much there. Just submit your Ray Guy votes right now.
Got it.
Just off of the mustache, if not for anything else, right, Nick?
It's a lip mullet. That's what I called it.
But we do have probably one of the biggest competitions left in camp. Is that kicker?
Trace Mack and Adam Mihalek.
Look at you. You are on a roll, dude.
I have no idea if I pronounced that correctly, but I said it with confidence, and you thought that I said it correctly.
You convinced me. If you went 4 for 4 today, that's quite the feat. And obviously, look, if he goes for 4 in the scrimmage on Saturday, maybe he's going to win the job. I think obviously he showed what he can do in the spring. Trey Mack comes in as a really highly touted freshman kicker. That's still a job that's to be decided. We heard coming from the scrimmage last Saturday that Trevor Etienne and Montrell Johnson are working as the returners. So that's kind of who you guys could potentially expect in the return game. That's kind of where things stand. Obviously, kicker is going to be in very important battle. Florida's, you want to talk about PTSD. They've had some with their kicker before. But anyways, obviously we'll see how things play out this weekend for the second scrimmage. Make sure that you guys stay tuned to Gators Online. Just like last week, we will have you guys hooked up on Saturday with some intel, notes, nuggets from the scrimmage, and obviously, like I mentioned at the top of the show, the media will eventually have a tour here soon of this new $85 million facility. So make sure that you be on the lookout for that. Nick and I will definitely be heading over to that to get some pictures and provide some coverage for you guys. So, Nick, glad we could finally reconnect on the show. One in person, but all those last names that you got right, you made up for it.
Bro, killed it today.
I appreciate you all for joining. We'll be back in here next week with a guest as well, and let you guys know how things went in the second scrimmage. For Nick Del Torre, I'm Zach Abolverdi.